Shipping, billing, admin, payroll, marketing. You're managing all the things, so why waste time sending important documents the old-fashioned way? Mail and ship when you want, how you want with Stamps.com. Print postage on demand 24/7 and schedule pickups from your office or home. Save up to 90% with automated rate shopping. That's why over 1 million small businesses trust Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com and use code PODCAST to try Stamps.com risk-free for 60 days.
Welcome to Leading Beyond Limits, the podcast where we explore the extraordinary journeys and insights of remarkable leaders who have pushed the boundaries of what's possible. Your host, Angel Radcliffe, who is a digital transformation leader, author, speaker, and financial educator, will lead each episode and dive deep into the stories, strategies, and philosophies that have empowered these exceptional individuals to lead, inspire, and achieve beyond the ordinary. We're about to embark on a journey of discovery and inspiration, and together, we'll learn what it takes to lead beyond limits. So grab your cape, or at least your favorite coffee mug, because we're about to unravel the extraordinary tales of trailblazers who've turned impossible into I'm possible. Let's get started.
Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Julie Halunga, a renowned leadership consultant and executive coach who specializes in empowering female leaders. Today, we're going to learn a little bit more about Julie's approach, her frameworks, and how she can help you build trust within teams. So Julie's going to share her expertise in helping to align teams, build relationships, and foster inclusive environments. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Angel. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
I'm excited to have you here and talk about one of my favorite topics, leadership. And one thing that I found very interesting in reading your profile is you have this quote where you say you're on a mission to rid the world of lazy leadership. And I feel like that aligns with my mission as well, to empower leaders. And I would love for you just to tell us about how you became so passionate about this topic as well.
Sure. So I started my career working in Boston at Harvard University and was very much at 22 years old, someone who preferred to be on the outside of the table, not sitting at the table, but around the periphery of the room or the conversation. I was not comfortable speaking up. I was not comfortable expressing my opinion. I hated networking and didn't like, even when it was a holiday party with my colleagues, I felt very uncomfortable. And I noticed that there were a lot of things that made me nervous. As I mentioned, I worked for Harvard. I would go down to New York to meet with our alums, and I would prepare and I would study and really try to understand who our alums were and what they did professionally, what they did when they were at the university, what they did socially. We had our research department, and I always would go in to this office on Park Avenue, let's say, and feel really confident. And then the minute we started talking, that confidence would just take a huge dip. And I realized then, fast forward a couple decades later, and I started my own leadership practice. One of the reasons why was because I felt that I didn't get what I needed as an emerging leader. And even when I was leading a team, I felt I didn't have the support. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the mentors that I needed to be truly effective. And I think about, when I reflect back on some of the things that I did or I said, or certain situations that I handled totally wrong, and now think about, okay, now I'm here to really influence and have an impact on those leaders, whether they're emerging or they're very senior in their roles, to help them, whether it's with a skill set or it's with that self-awareness, because I really see that you need both. And you can't have the self-awareness and not have the skills. Okay, I understand if I'm in a situation that's high conflict, I realize that, and I know how I typically respond, but I don't know what to do once I realize that, then that awareness takes you just so far. And so when I came and started my practice and on this mission to rid the world of lazy leadership, it's because I know that we need leaders who communicate with trust. They see conflict as a necessity and they behave with integrity. And that's really what I'm out to have that impact on leaders around the world, to give them that support, those skills, that awareness to help them be deliberate leaders.
I love it. And so much of what you said resonates with all that I do and why Leading Beyond Limits exists. And I think this is one of the reasons why I was like, I have to have her on the show because we're very much aligned. And
Yes,
as you mentioned, companies, they do their best in aligning people to build their functional skills, but I think they forget about the soft skills and what
totally.
it takes to really be a leader, whether you're a new leader or, as you said, something more senior. And I had this very same experience of having poor leadership and not really having someone there to properly guide. And I was like, you know what? I would love to empower people to be a better leader than I was in my first time in a manager role. I tell that
Mhm.
story so many times, or it was horrible. And I always say it was never my fault. No one ever taught me. We didn't have the proper leadership training, we didn't have the proper tools.
That's right.
And I feel like so many companies fail when it comes to leadership development. And I look at it, I still work in corporate, and I look around and I'm like, gotta be kidding me. Like they're promoting all these people. Hey, you're getting these high titles and they're leading all these teams, but they're not equipping them. Like you put people into a 4-hour workshop for one day and
Yeah,
you never follow up with them again. And
that's right. And think that everything will be fine.
I know today, like our topic is about building trust within teams. And I think some of the foundational approaches to building trust is really just equipping yourself with those skills to be a great leader. So whether it's emotional intelligence or understanding how do you actually empathize with someone or how do you actually coach someone, there's a difference in the way that you coach and guide someone and understanding those strategies. I would like to understand from your point of view, like some common challenges that leaders often face when they're trying to build trust within their teams.
So some of the common things that I have experienced and how I came about focusing on trust was that people were throwing out trust like this just blanket statement, and recognizing that I would hear things like, I'm not going to work with her. I just don't trust her. And when I would peel back that onion and really delve into why don't you trust and what has happened, and what I see is that there actually are areas of trust. But if someone, for instance, continually is late in their delivery, or has this consistent behavior of, another example that I hear all the time, it's like taking someone's idea, that they don't trust them. And if we can shift the conversation and say, okay, I don't blame you, that person stole your idea. But are there areas where you do trust the person? Then we're able to have a conversation around trust that we weren't able to have before when we just throw this blanket statement out there. So when I look at trust, I look at it from 4 different areas. So one is humanity, right? So like treating people as human beings, which boggles my mind that we don't think about that. So it's really, I care about you as an individual, as a human being without my own agenda. The second piece I look at is authenticity. So I do as I say, and I say as I do. So that might be where you just took my idea and you're saying it's your own. So there's a lack of authenticity there. Dependability, just what it is. I'm going to do as I say I will when I say I will. So if I'm always late getting something to you, the lack of trust is in this pillar of dependability. And then finally is this piece of aptitude. And I find that a lot of times this is the piece that people aren't sure what's going on, but they have a lack of trust. So when I talk about aptitude, it's really talking about the piece, I have the skills and the knowledge to do what's being asked of me. So there's something called the blindness effect. So someone is really successful in one area of their role. And because they're really successful, and I'm guessing your listeners, Angel, can resonate with this because you're really successful over here. People then say, okay, here's another team to manage, or here's another project that we want you to lead. And it may be totally new, completely different tasks or clients or customers that you're working on. But because you've been wildly successful in one area, people assume that you're going to be wildly successful in another. And that's that blindness effect. So what I recommend to people is if you feel you've been thrown under the bus or you feel you've been set up for failure, to acknowledge, hey, I'm really excited about this opportunity you've given me. Maybe it's a stretch opportunity. I'm really excited about this, but I need more information in this area, or I need more resources, or I need more support to be able to be successful. So if you don't acknowledge that, ask for help, then you are setting yourself up for others not to trust you because you're not going to be performing as they expect you to. So if you can think about when you have that feeling of, I don't trust someone, think about where does it fall into one of those four categories: humanity, authenticity, dependability, and aptitude. And if you notice, it's only that they're always late. But I feel that they genuinely care about our customer or our client or me. Then you're able to approach that conversation and say, listen, here's what's going on. I know that you truly care about this project or this customer. And I'm losing trust in you because you tell me you're going to get something done by Thursday. And the following Monday, I need to check in with you because I haven't heard anything. And that's diminishing the trust that we have with one another. That tends to be a far more effective conversation than just saying, I don't trust you anymore and I'm done because you're always late. That's not really engaging in a conversation that's going to go somewhere or change a behavior.
Absolutely. And a lot of what you said can be summed up as simple as communication and making sure that you are communicating. So if you're the employee or if you're on the team, no matter if you're the manager or whatever role you play, you have to communicate both ways. And
That's right.
I always feel like a lot of leaders mistakenly say the communication is on the end of the employee. And I'm like, it's everyone.
It's
Because
everyone.
as an employee, you're expecting transparent communication from your leadership. And then from the leadership, you're expecting that communication from the employees. They need help or some type of support. No one can read minds here. And when you fail to have communication, or some companies don't have great open door communication policies, or some people feel like they may be reprimanded for communicating like whatever's on their mind. Like, you don't have that open door and transparent communication, then you can't have team alignment.
That's right. Absolutely right. And I find that people don't want to have those hard conversations, to your point, Angel, because we were never taught how. And so we just sweep something under the rug. But when we sweep things under the rug, then there's a bump, right? And we trip and we don't do what we need to do both ways. So I always find, like when you just said that, it's on the plate of the employee. To me, that's the lazy leadership that I'm trying to get rid of, because it's a hard conversation to have. So when we are able to have it, it smooths out that rug. We're able to, even in difficult times, we're able to talk through things. And what I see is that when we don't address a misunderstanding or a miscommunication, it will escalate. That's foregone conclusion. That is what will happen. And when it escalates, that's when it turns ugly. That's when it turns into that destructive conflict. Because not all conflict is bad. We can have constructive conflict. But if we ignore it, if we sweep it under the rug, we don't have those hard conversations, then that's when people leave. That's when customers leave. That's when clients fire us. That's what we have to be aware of. That's the risk of not having those conversations and having some strong communications that will help everyone involved.
And earlier you shared some various areas. You said looking at 4 areas: humanity, authenticity, dependability, aptitude. Now, and we talked about communication. We know that's key, but is there any particular framework that you have that leaders can use to overcome any personal barriers that they may have and trying to build trust with their team? Yeah, I can give an example, such as if there's not an open door policy, or maybe that's not necessarily the leader's fault, maybe it's something ingrained from the company they work for. But I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So that when I think about trust, one is recognizing those 4 areas. What area is it missing? What area is it strong or it exists even? And then thinking about how can I build trust naturally and intentionally? So I was meeting with a former client yesterday, and she was sharing with me about a leader she used to work with who she so admired, and he really built genuine relationships, and she would emulate him. She recently left that company after over a dozen years and reached out to him to say thank you and how much she had learned from him. It's been a month and she has not heard back from him. So yes, can we say he's really busy and he's a lot on his plate? But she's actually learned that's his MO, that once people are no longer part of his team, he doesn't have time for them. Even if they're still at the organization, he doesn't have time. So that's a great way to lose trust. So if you are genuine and you build trust naturally, there are 2 things that happen. One is that you create connection. You find a commonality, right? It may be as simple as we grew up in the same town, or we went to the same university, or we play the same sport, or we have the same interest in I live in Colorado. You meet people for the first time, one of the first questions you get asked is, what ski pass do you have? So it's finding that commonality. And then the second piece is always thinking, how can I add value? Even if you are the more junior person or you are a mentee, how, as a mentee, can you add value to your mentor? So I always say to emerging leaders who say to me, well, they're the expert. What am I going to share? You can share an on the ground viewpoint that maybe that really senior person is unaware of. So when you're thinking about that, building that connection and demonstrating that, it's, one of the best things that you can do to create connection is to ask open-ended questions. And I always laugh with my son, his college roommate. This kid is 19 years old and he asks the best questions. It's natural to him. He's completely unaware that he's doing it, but he's really good at listening to what people are saying and then asking a question based on what they said. Most people, especially most 19-year-olds, they hear someone say something and the natural response is to want to share their experience with that. So if they say, I just went on vacation to Italy, when you're building real connection, you may ask a question like, what was your favorite meal? Or what was your favorite activity? Or what did you find the most interesting? Asking those open-ended questions. And then when you're actively listening, you're responding to when they're showing excitement, when maybe their body language changes a little bit and they maybe fold in on themselves a little bit, or there's emotion that's being shared, either excitement and the pace of their voice gets quicker because they're so excited, or maybe their voice cracks because there's some emotion behind what they're talking about. And to check in with them and to say, wow, I hear your excitement. What are you so excited about? Or on the flip side, hey, I notice there's some emotion showing up. What's going on for you? And it amazes me every time I have this conversation and people try these 2 things of creating connection and adding value. They come back to me and say, oh, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And so really thinking about going into every conversation, how can I build connection and how can I add value?
I agree, Julie. And he talked about mentoring and asking open-ended questions and really just being engaging. And times, just depending on those team members, maybe that's not working, or maybe it's the approach from the leader or vice versa. In your experience, how can individual coaching help leaders to develop these skills to build this trust and foster this environment with their teams, this open environment?
Sure. So what I love about, and Angel, you and I are on the same page with this, there's the building of the skills, and there's how do you really implement that in your culture, in your team, for you as a leader. Individual coaching, the way I work with clients is really, okay, you've built the skill, and maybe that's a program that their company has for emerging leaders or senior leaders, experienced people who want to get to that next level. And then in one-on-one individual coaching, or sometimes I do small group coaching, is diving deep into the practicality of it and saying, okay, so I have an employee on my team. This literally happened today. A client said to me, we're good friends, but how she shows up professionally brings out the worst in me, which is, it got my mind in a twist hearing those two things can coexist. So working through with coaching allows individuals to see their role in a situation, because none of us are immune to what the challenges are, and like, what am I doing to add to this, or what am I doing that's not helping? And that the coaching really brings out that awareness, and then the accountability. Okay, so we have this awareness. What are you going to do about it? And when are you going to do it? And what's the conversation you're going to have? And really help people understand, what am I doing to add to this, to kind of add fuel to the fire, perhaps by saying something or not saying something, but really help them take blinders off and see what they can do to help the situation and the individuals.
Now, Julie, I saw that you have a very specific framework called the trusted voice paradigm, and I'm really interested to hear more about it, what it is, and how do you utilize it?
Sure. So I developed the trusted paradigm, I will admit, during COVID, when travel had ceased and I had extra time on my hands. And I went through notes of the past decade of the conversations that I'd had with leaders and their teams and their direct reports. And what I came down to through all of that research was there's a lack of trust. And so that allowed me then to go back and reread all my notes and think through this. And so I developed the trusted voice paradigm that essentially is constantly dynamic moving wheel of 4 different attributes that play into the trust and where trusts exist. So I always start with the individual, but know that this is constantly evolving. So having the confidence and competency, going to that aptitude piece, having a growth mindset allows people to trust the talent they're working with. So that's the first one. The second one is then the trust in their leaders. So being able to collaborate, leaders who give honest and genuine feedback. To your point, Angel, being able to communicate and understand what people need to hear, not what you need to say, which is what I call the titanium rule, which builds on the golden rule and the platinum rule. And the titanium rule is speak to others the way they want and need to be spoken to. Not what I need to say, but what you need to hear. Then we have trust in teams, because oftentimes I may hear, I trust my team, but we as a team have to work with this other team and I don't trust them. So that's where team alignment comes in, engagement. That's often where constructive or destructive conflict exists across teams, within teams. And then we also have the trust in the organization or the firm. And this is where we have diversity of thought, where we are thinking about not just the bottom line, but we're thinking about the impact that we're having. We're thinking about synergies that may exist within our audience, within our community. And what I see is when there is trust within those 4 and it's constantly being evaluated, then we have trust overall. But if there is one of those four pieces where trust doesn't exist, or there is distrust in some way, then we will only grow so far.
I love it. Those are great words. And I saw that I saw this is like very interesting. I haven't seen this with anyone else that I've had on the show, but I saw that you also speak with leaders at retreats. So I would love to really get your perspective as far as how does a firm having a retreat, how is that able to contribute to team trust and alignment? And what elements of a company retreat do you think makes the retreat successful overall?
Yeah. So when I look at retreats and when I design a retreat with a firm, oftentimes they will come to me and they'll say, here's our agenda. Here's what we're thinking. And it's a lot of talking at each other. They're taking turns and they're reporting back. And then maybe they have a fun activity or a dinner and they have fun, but then they're driving back home and all of that positive or goodness evaporates because that's not truly what's going to create that trust. So when I come into an organization, oftentimes, let's say it's for a day or a half day or 2 days, I will start with something that will build that trust. And I'm not talking about trust falls, but some activity that resonates with their industry, who they are as an organization, that gets them to know each other better. And I am blown away every time I do this that I hear someone say, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that you did that. I went to school there too. The most common things that as I was talking about building that connection, that they haven't done. So we always start there. It always is very exciting, selfishly speaking, but it's very exciting to me when I hear people, the energy in the room, people are talking and they're laughing and the energy in the room just rises immediately. That's a sign of success to me that we're doing something right. So we start with that. And then they may say to me, we struggle with having difficult conversations, or we just sweep conflict under the rug. That trust, conflict, and communication are the things that I focus on. Those are my areas of expertise because I've seen that's what organizations need. So then I'll come in and talk to them and build a little bit of skill. But the really key thing that builds the trust is then when we talk about whether it's with intact teams or the organization as a whole or the leadership team, depending who the retreat is for. Okay, now we know how to deal with conflict. But what do we as a team, how do we want to experience conflict? Or when conflict arises, what do we want to do and what do we want to remember? So it's really changing the culture and coming to some agreements that helps the individuals when that conflict comes up. Because otherwise it's, oh, we had this great retreat and that was really fun, but it's not sticking. And that's my goal, is to make it stick and help them a month or a year down the road.
I love it. And conflict management, that's definitely key. And I always say a lot of people fear conflict, but
Yes.
I feel as though when you have conflict, that pushes that open communication and it's pushing everyone to be innovative. And sometimes there can be healthy conflict. There has to be
Absolutely.
some type of conflict. Everything can't be easy peasy.
And in fact, some of the best ideas often come out of conflict.
True. Yes. There's actually some companies that push their employees to have conflict because that's
Yeah.
how they say they get their best ideas.
Yes.
And I wish more companies would really take on that concept instead of brushing things under the rug, because you really get a lot of things out in the open. And yeah, we'll see what happens on that front. But
You and I are on the same page on that one.
yes, so Julie, it's been great. I know we're almost at the end of the show, which I'm like, this is a great conversation. I don't want it to end, but I'd love to have you back down the road. I do have one last question, and this can be for anyone who's listening, who's a leader, or maybe, they have some say so in guiding an organization. What advice would you give to organizations looking to create more inclusive culture where trust can thrive?
Yeah, you can call me, first of all. And what I would encourage is for organization, especially senior leadership teams, to sit down and have these honest conversations and talk through with a facilitator what it looks like for them. What does conflict look like? What does effective communication looks like? And not just talking about it, but actually showing those behaviors and demonstrating those behaviors so that others learn from that and hopefully emulate what they're doing.
I love it. I love it. And this, even though this is 30 minutes, this is like a lot of information. I think it's very valuable to leaders as well as those who are coming up into a leadership position, or maybe someone who's been in a leadership role for a while and they just need to dust things off and start over. You have to really learn how to build that trust with your team, building trust in the organization. And there's different levels, I think, where you have to think about this concept of trust. But Julie, thank you so much for sharing the invaluable insights. And I would love to have you back down the road and we can have a very much longer conversation around this topic. But any last words you have for listeners today?
Sure. I just go back to that lazy leadership. Don't practice that. I'm not calling anyone a lazy leader, but really think about being deliberate and how you want to be seen, how you want to show up, whether every conversation, every meeting, really think about, be deliberate, even if it's as you're walking down the hall or pushing the Zoom or Teams link. How do I want to show up in this conversation, in this interaction, so that you're being deliberate and you're showing up that way for your audience?
Thank you for tuning into another inspiring episode of Leading Beyond Limits. If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to hear more from our incredible guests, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us. And if you have a remarkable leader in mind who you'd like to hear on our show, or any questions and comments, feel free to reach out to us. You can find our contact information in the show notes. Remember, leadership knows no bounds, and with the right insights and determination, you too can lead beyond limits. Until next time, keep reaching for the stars and leading with purpose.